I am so excited for our conversation. Today, I'm talking to Maureen Whitman, founder and director of Homeschool Connections at homeschoolconnections.com. Maureen is wife and mother of 7 children, and she's been homeschooling since before it was cool. So I'm really excited. You're one of my heroes. Homeschool Connections has been great for our family, and I can't wait to hear about your journey. But first, tell us about homeschooling in the 90s. What was that like?
I made the decision to homeschool in the early 80s when I was in college because I had met a homeschooler and I had had back surgery as a kid and I was out of school for a year. And I had a tutor come to my house for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. And she had to keep me back because I was getting ahead of the fellow students, right? And I thought, this is crazy. Why am I going to school all day long? So I heard when I met this homeschool kid in college, I'm like, I'm going to do that. So in the 90s, when I began homeschooling, no one else was doing it. What about socialization? What about academics? You don't have a teaching degree. How are you going to teach that kid? And today, we're so overwhelmed. There's so many resources out there for us, right? Mm-hmm. We can pick and choose whatever we need and want, but sometimes it's overwhelming. Yeah. Back then, we didn't have that problem. You went to the library and got some books, and you read real books, and just really focused on learning as a family. For me, I always said I could have had the best Catholic homeschool next door, walking distance, and I'd still homeschool because I just loved the family life that it afforded it and the ability to give my kids a fun childhood.
Yeah, I remember my mom was homeschooling us. I was homeschooled for just 5 years of my education, and it was in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And I remember she had like one catalog. She would order everything from Christian book distributors.
Right.
We were Protestant at the time, and there just weren't a lot of options. And I loved homeschooling. I'm so glad I was, but I did find it kind of isolating because we were in a rural area, right, and we were the only ones really in the town who were doing it. And so something like Homeschool Connections would have been an amazing tool for someone like my mom back in the day. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to found Homeschool Connections, and what exactly do you do? What's your mission?
So that's a really great question because Homeschool Connections has evolved a great deal. We started in 2008, and what happened was, I saw a good 50% of our homeschool moms putting their kids into school when they got it to high school, which is great if that's what you want to do, right? But most of these moms wanted to keep homeschooling, but they just didn't feel equipped. The big question I always hear from homeschool moms, am I enough? Am I enough? Yeah. And they just felt they weren't for homeschooling high school. So Walter Crawford, who's my co-founder and my co-director, had reached out to me about doing a webinar series. He used that technology in his business, and he wanted to find a way to help homeschool parents. So we were doing these free webinars for homeschool parents, and we had done some polling, and several parents came back to us and said, instead of doing these free webinars, could you just do classes?
Could you just
the
teach
Protestants
my kids?
have been doing this. Yeah, my high schooler needs you more than I do. The Protestants have been doing it for 10 years, and the Catholics are nowhere to be found. So, we're a little behind in everything. The Catholic Church moves slowly.
We do.
And, right, like back in the 80s and 90s, most of the homeschoolers were Protestant homeschoolers. The Catholics were late to the game because we had great Catholic schools. So we said, yes, let's do that, because I did have this experience of all these moms who really wanted to keep homeschooling. So we thought, we're going to offer 4, maybe 5, get crazy, offer 5 courses on the hard things, calculus and physics and Latin, the things that moms struggle with. But people went crazy for it. And next thing we knew, we were offering middle school, then grade school. And today we have, I think, 220 live courses per semester and over 750 recorded self-learning courses.
Yeah, it's an amazing catalog now. And I mentioned that my own kids have done some of the literature classes, and you have some big names. I mean, my kids were taking a course with Joseph Pierce, and he's teaching them the Iliad and the Odyssey. And
right.
This is an amazing infrastructure that you've built now. And like you said, it goes from very young years to later years. Tell me a little bit about some of your favorite courses that you offer.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there are so many. I love the out of the box stuff,
Yeah.
So, first I should say that the Holy Spirit is our CEO. So when you talk about people like Joseph Pierce, how did Joseph Pierce come to teach for us? I knew him from going to conferences as a fellow speaker. And one day I just said, hey, you should do this. And, or one day Gary Machuda called me up out of the blue and said, I hear you're doing these classes, the great Catholic apologist. So my favorite courses are going to be like Joseph's, these little 6-week courses on one book. We can just focus on one book, or Gary Machuda doing Catholic apologetics and teaching children how to listen and be kind as well as defend their faith. And of course, we offer the typical biology and physics and calculus and algebra and all that.
One of my children is taking the high school environmental science course, and
Yes.
I love as a Catholic, like you said, there's the standard, like here's the sciences you need to qualify for college, and so you want to make sure you get them. But I love how it is infused with Catholic theology, and so
Right.
she's reading a letter of John Paul II on the environment while she's studying this. So instead of getting this like Malthusian, we hate humanity, environmental science, she's getting
Right.
human beings are the ingenuity that God has put on the earth to have dominion and to care for creation. So it's a completely different worldview that you're offering from what someone might pick up at a public high school. But I really want to get to the heart of why you homeschool, why you want to make this gift possible for other families. What do you say to young families who are looking at homeschooling as a lifestyle around which they can build their family?
Part of Homeschool Connections' mission is not just selling online courses, right? The whole reason we were founded was because we wanted to help our fellow homeschoolers. So when I first started homeschooling all those years ago, and I didn't know what I was doing, there weren't a lot of resources, and I saw an ad in the news, back in the old days when you read a newspaper, like the actual paper, and there was an ad, Catholic homeschoolers meet on First Fridays at St. Thomas in East Lansing. And, so I went, and I came out of Mass, and someone walked up to me and said, are you a homeschooler? And next thing I knew, I had all these women who were supporting me and helping me and walking me through it and helping me get started. So that's that's a big part of my motivation at Homeschool Connections. So in addition to offering online classes, we have the blog, which we keep pretty active. We still do those webinars that we started with. We're doing, online conferences. We have the podcast. And so all those things are geared for homeschoolers, Catholic homeschoolers in general, not just Homeschool Connections families. So we may even have guests on our podcast who work for Colby Academy or Mother of Divine Grace or, Seton Home Study or whatever.
Right.
Because we recognize that there are many different ways to homeschool. And we're here to support all of those ways. So, if, for example, we have a lot of Seton Home Study families who want to take, say, computer science or something that's not offered there. And they might just do 1 or 2 courses with us. We're different than everyone else in that we're not a full curriculum. So that's where we come from. We also have our Homeschool Connections Facebook group. We have a Mighty Networks group. We have the Student Cafe. Now, you do have to be a homeschool student or Homeschool Connection student to be in the cafe. That's for high school students, and it's monitored by adults. So those are, the opportunities we offer to help homeschool moms really be successful.
So tell me about your upcoming speaker series, and there's a conference in the winter.
Right. So I'm really excited about this speaker series. We're starting with Joseph Pierce, who we've already mentioned, and Philip Campbell, the Catholic historian. So it's brand new. It's still in the planning phases, but it's coming up very soon. So the idea is, these guys teach our young people, and so many times we have parents say, I want to learn that too. So the idea is that we offer this series where parents are learning something too about literature, history, etc.
That's neat. And that's one of my favorite parts of homeschooling is just like I learned how to do long division. I was so bad at division in grade school. I thought I was a bad math student. But as a parent, you have so many opportunities to continue learning with your children. I love with each child revisiting historical periods with them or concepts of the faith, because every child who I go through, say, 8th grade Baltimore Catechism with, each of my kids has had different questions about the faith. They've had different interests or saints' lives that speak to them. And so I feel as I walk through, for example, 8th grade Catechism with each new child that God's given to us, my eyes are opened to new dimensions of our faith. And so I love that Homeschool Connections has these opportunities for parents. You also have something for parents, which every mother needs right around February, called the Refresh Conference. So tell me about that.
So that came out of February is known as Burnout Month.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So whether you're teaching in public school, Catholic school, homeschool, February is a rough time. We always tell parents, don't change up your curriculum in February. Don't
Never make a
any
decision in February or postpartum. That's my mantra.
Exactly.
No changes
Exactly.
postpartum or in February.
We've just come out of all the holidays and it's still cold and it's dark and we're ready for spring and spring's still far away. And so February is just a rough month for us. So we started, that was one of the very first things we did back in 2008 was the Refresh Conference. It's not so much a how-to conference as an encouragement conference. So really just help moms maybe talk a little bit about self-care, talk about why we homeschool, revisit those things, letting parents know, tools are out there to help them, et cetera. So that's what that was born of. Yeah, I love that conference.
I think everyone who's been to one does.
It's funny, we have parents who reach out to us and say that conference is a lifesaver, because at one point we talked about, do we keep doing it? And we had so many moms reach out and said, oh, do not
don't take away my conference.
Right?
I need that one. Yeah, I would encourage everyone listening to make sure you're on the Homeschool Connections email list so that you know when that's coming up and you'll send out registration and everything every year. Yeah. Also for the speaker series, make sure you go to homeschoolconnections.com and put your email address in. And they don't spam you either. You guys are really good about not overwhelming with the emails, but great resources coming through that there.